what are the top 5 things that you need to consider as a buy and hold turnkey investor? So you're interested in rental properties, you've decided to invest in a turnkey rental property, which is amazing, by the way. And you want to know what are the top 5 things that you need to understand going into that. Hopefully, this video is going to help give you an amazing launch point to start a fantastic turnkey investing career, if you will, or side hustle, whatever you want to call it. So, number one, as a turnkey buy and hold investor, the best thing that you can do before anything else is understand that this is a long-term wealth building strategy. It doesn't mean that you can't make money in the short term by any stretch. You totally can. But as a big picture investment strategy, this is over the long term. A little bit of a motivating story. I bought my first turnkey 10 years ago. And of all the turnkeys I ended up buying, and this is true for all rental properties, but especially my turnkeys, I have seen nothing but rental increases, never mind the property value increases, but I've seen drastic rental amount increases over those 10 years. It's part of inflation, it's part of appreciation, the whole thing. And so the cash flow numbers that I ran initially have, I'm well surpassing those now because there's so many ways that a rental property makes money, and I'll get more into that in a second. But just all of the numbers over time, those profits really start kind of snowballing. So always understand that this is a long-term wealth building, financial freedom, growth strategy, and an amazing one at that. Second thing you want to consider as a turnkey buy and hold investor is exit strategy. This is going to help you determine what property you ultimately end up buying, but you always want to be thinking about the end game or what if scenarios. So where this really kind of ties in things is when you're looking at different turnkey properties that might be available. An example of exit strategy is who are you going to sell that property to later should you decide to sell it? An example of this would be if you buy a really dumpy, cheap property, turnkey property in a primarily renter heavy neighborhood and you want to sell it, who is going to be available and interested in buying that property from you? If it's going to be an investor, that's fine. But investors, what do they always want? A discount. What if you have a nice property in a primarily owner occupied neighborhood and now you have the option to sell to a primary home buyer? Primary home buyers always pay more for properties. So what are your different options for who you can sell it to? Is there any potential of doing a cash out refi should you need it? Are you investing in a declining market or a growth market? Because if it's declining, who's going to be around or what's going to happen to the value of your property should you need to get out of it? Versus a growth market and owner occupants, way more potential for what you can do with this property. So you always want to be thinking about the end game in order to help you decide on which property you feel good about pursuing. Next thing to consider as a turnkey buy and hold investor is, I kind of alluded to this, how exactly do you plan for this property to profit? So one of the best things you can understand is that all rental properties have 5 potential profit centers. They can make money in 5 different ways: cash flow, appreciation, tax benefits, equity build via mortgage paydown, and hedging against inflation. I'm not going to dive into the details of each of those right now, but I am going to link to a video down below that does dive into those. When you understand those profit centers, you're going to be able to better understand what you're choosing as your investment property and how you plan for it to profit in each of those centers. So, like, getting out of turnkey world for a minute, I live in Los Angeles. If I buy a rental property in Los Angeles right now, my cash flow stream is going to be negative for quite a while. That may or may not be okay depending on what that appreciation bar is going to do. So this is applicable for any investment property that you're looking at, is you want to analyze it against those 5 profit centers. So again, check out that video, learn more about those, but you want to make sure that you understand how exactly it is you're planning to profit from this turnkey property that you're thinking of purchasing. This also goes into play conversations about financing, because what's the financing payment going to do? How equity, yada, yada, yada. So make sure you understand that avenue. Another tip for turnkey buy and hold investors. We've already talked about profit. That's very exciting. But guess what? When profit doesn't happen, if things go wrong, One of the biggest keys about turnkey rental properties, and quite frankly, any real estate investing strategy that you're going to do, is knowing how to do proper and thorough due diligence. The turnkey providers are going to give you a pro forma. They're going to tell you, oh, it's in this neighborhood. Here's the house. Oh, it's rehab to this level. Great. But you, as a responsible investor, need to verify all of those things. Verify all the numbers they give you, verify the quality of the neighborhood, verify everything. It sounds like a lot. It's actually not that hard, but it's a little bit of a learning curve to learn how to do it to that thorough of a level. You want to check up on everything. There is very little about a property that you can't verify, shy of like freak of nature events or whatever. So before you even go under contract for your first turnkey rental property, have an idea of how exactly you do that thorough due diligence. I'm going to have a whole bunch of links for you down below that hit on all of these things, but I'll include one also on doing proper levels of due diligence on your turnkey rental property. Very important, if not one of the most important things, because if you know how to do good enough due diligence on a turnkey rental property, it almost doesn't even matter what provider you work with, because ultimately the provider doesn't matter, the property matters. So if you know how to check up on the property thoroughly, which I'll be honest, most of us don't know how to do it that well. So the provider does kind of matter in that case, but technically it is all about the property. Anyways, last tip for turnkey buy and hold investors is choosing what provider and market you want to invest with and invest in. What provider do you want to work with in what market? Now, I have a philosophy or a theory that when you're going the turnkey route, you can actually make this decision much easier than if you're going non-turnkey and you have to figure out what market to buy in and all that kind of stuff. It's not a complicated philosophy at all, but it is enough where I have a whole video about it just by itself. So instead of diving into that here, I want you to check out this video. This is an important one on how to go ahead and choose that provider in that market. So let me run back through all 5 of these things really quickly. Understanding turnkeys are a long-term wealth strategy. Understanding your exit strategy potentials. How are you going to get out of this property should you need to? How is this property going to profit exactly? You always want to kind of have a pretty good grasp on that. How are you going to do proper and thorough due diligence? Very important. And then lastly, how are you going to go ahead and choose your market and provider? That one you're going to have to check out the other video. But I hope these help. I hope these paint a motivating and energizing picture for getting involved in turnkey rental properties. Yeah, there's a lot left unsaid, but trust me, you got to have the starting points in order to learn it all. If this was helpful, go ahead and smash that like button and make sure that you're subscribed to my channel. Hit that big red subscribe button, because I have so many turnkey videos that and they're all based off my own personal experience. I'm a turnkey investor myself. So hit that subscribe button, check them all out. And I hope, and I want to hear from you if they're helpful for your turnkey investing journey.